David looked at the data streams flowing around him. His professional curiosity fought with his survival instincts. The information displays were showing technical details for air processors that matched the ones he'd been maintaining, but with changes that weren't in any manual he'd ever read. "Those are my processors," he said, moving closer despite knowing better. "But these readings, these efficiency curves are impossible. You can't get air recycling performance like this without additional power sources that don't exist in our installation plans. Because the processors have been changed beyond their official specifications," Salera said quietly. "Changed to do things that air processing systems were never designed to do." David studied the data. His engineering mind automatically analyzed the technical impossibilities displayed before him. These changes would require access to the primary systems during construction, complete knowledge of atmospheric chemistry, and... He paused, the implications hitting him. And specific intent to alter the air composition in ways that would affect how people think. Very good. Now you begin to understand why the hidden witness right exists. Someone's been drugging the station's air supply. Someone's been making sure that peace negotiations always end in hostility rather than progress. Small amounts of aggression boosters distributed through the air recycling systems, activated during key treaty discussions. Salara's expression grew serious. The ceasefire negotiations aren't failing because our species can't get along. They're failing because corporate interests have been artificially creating the conditions for continued conflict. David sank into the meditation area seating. His legs suddenly felt unsteady as the size of what she was telling him became clear. "You're talking about sabotage. Systematic manipulation of an entire peace process. I'm talking about corporate war profiteering on a galactic scale. And you, David Chen, have just become the witness whose testimony can expose it." The room's lighting changed. David realized that the crystal walls weren't just decorative. They were recording everything, creating a permanent record of his presence and his growing understanding of the conspiracy he'd stumbled into. "What happens now?" he asked, though he was beginning to suspect that his quiet career maintaining air processors had just become much more complicated. "Now," Salera said, settling beside him in the seating area, "we decide whether you're ready to become a keeper of secrets that could save 3 species from a war they don't want, or whether I need to find a way to make you forget everything you've just learned." Outside the room, David could hear the gentle hum of air processors continuing their work, unaware that they'd been turned into weapons of war. Inside, surrounded by impossible technology and secret information that could rewrite the balance of power across star systems, he realized that getting lost had been the most important navigation error of his life. The question was whether it would also be the last mistake he'd live to regret. "The good news," Salera said, turning on a holographic display that made David's workpad look like a stone tablet, "is that the hidden witness right comes with excellent benefits. Better security clearance, access to archives spanning 3 civilizations, and diplomatic immunity that covers most forms of accidental treason." Accidental treason? David watched data streams flow around him, showing financial records and communication logs that definitely weren't meant for his security level. That's supposed to be good news? The bad news is that those benefits come with responsibilities that most people find overwhelming. And enemies who prefer their witnesses much less alive. Salera pointed to a particular data stream that showed shipping records with corporate logos David recognized. Also, the temporary bond can only be broken within 72 hours. After that, it becomes permanent regardless of your preference in the matter. David studied the financial records flowing past. His engineering mind automatically identified patterns that painted a picture he really didn't want to see. These shipping records show weapons deliveries to all 3 sides of the conflict. From the same suppliers. Meridian Corporation, Helix Industries, and Quantum Solutions. 3 different corporate names that happen to share the same board of directors and the same profit model. Solera highlighted connections between the financial data that revealed a web of corporate manipulation spanning multiple star systems. They've been playing our species against each other for 18 months, making sure that every peace negotiation fails and military contracts remain profitable. But why change the air processors? Why not just argue against the peace process through normal political channels? Because normal political channels require public debate. And public debate might lead people to ask uncomfortable questions about who benefits from continued warfare. Solera pulled up technical specifications that made David's stomach sink. Air manipulation is invisible, deniable, and creates the exact psychological conditions needed to ensure diplomatic failure. David examined the processor changes, noting design elements that were both elegant and horrifying. These chemical additives are designed to increase territorial aggression while reducing empathy and cooperation. Anyone breathing this modified air would be likely to interpret diplomatic offers as threats. Which explains why every negotiation session has ended with someone storming out in anger despite all 3 species genuinely wanting peace. Solara's expression grew thoughtful. The question is what we do with this information now that you've witnessed it. David Chin was tired. Really tired. He had been working for almost 20 hours straight. He drank lots of fake coffee and kept going because he was stubborn. That's what kept the air machines working when they wanted to break down. When David took the wrong turn, everything changed. The halls in New Geneva Station were crazy. Someone designed them who thought finding your way around should be like solving a puzzle instead of being easy. David was so tired he couldn't read the colored lines on the floor that were supposed to help people find where they needed to go. Section 12, Part C, Engineering Door. Gamma, David said to himself. He looked at his work pad and tried to match the location signs with what looked like a hallway that had too many dimensions. Or maybe Gamma Prime. Or maybe I'm seeing things because I had too much coffee. The door he picked opened to something that definitely wasn't an engineering room. The room beyond was round like a ball. It was made from something that looked like frozen starlight. The walls showed moving pictures of information that flowed like liquid through the air. In the middle was a small area for sitting, surrounded by floating screens showing star maps, treaty papers, and secret information that made David's security pass look like a library card. And in that sitting area, waiting for him, was an alien woman. Seeing her made David go from confused to scared. She was beautiful in a way that made David's engineer brain immediately know she shouldn't be there. She had pretty features like old statues, silver hair that seemed to catch light that wasn't really there, and purple eyes that seemed very deep. David's air machine manuals hadn't taught him how to deal with things like this. Her only clearly non-human feature was the pointed ears that stuck up through her hair like parts of a building designed by someone with great taste and better genetics. David said. His brain tried to understand what was happening while his security training yelled warnings about being in secret areas during important peace talks. I think I'm in the wrong room. She looked up at him with a smile that said she had been waiting for exactly this conversation at exactly this moment in exactly this place where he definitely shouldn't be. I know, she said with calm certainty that made David's stomach drop. You know I'm in the wrong room or you know something else that I really don't want to hear about? Both, probably. She pointed to the floating screens around them. Please sit. We have much to talk about. David looked around the room. His engineering background noticed details that were impossible. The picture systems were working without any power sources he could see. The information streams were showing things at better quality than current screen technology could do. The crystal walls seemed to be actively processing information instead of just reflecting it. "I really should go," he said, backing toward the door. "I was just looking for the environmental control connection. This is obviously some sort of secret archive area that I definitely don't have permission for." David Chin, engineering specialist, level 7 clearance, assigned to air processing systems maintenance. Her voice had an accent he couldn't identify, musical, but with something that suggested she had authority beyond her apparent age. 34 hours of overtime logged this week, mostly dealing with processor problems that shouldn't exist according to manufacturer instructions. "How do you know that?" "Because your being here is not accidental despite what you might think." She stood, moving with smooth grace that made the impossible technology around them seem like a natural part of her presence. "My name is Salera. I am the keeper of the hidden archives. And you, David Chin, have just activated the hidden witness right." "The what right?" "An ancient rule that connects unauthorized witnesses to the keeper of secret information, making them temporary partners with shared responsibility for protecting sensitive data." Salera moved to one of the data streams, her fingers dancing through the holographic interfaces with practiced ease. "By entering this room and seeing its contents, you have become legally required to help protect information that affects the survival of 3 species." David felt his brain try to process this information and fail. "Legally required? How?" "I'm pretty sure I didn't sign anything when I got lost in your impossible building design. The bond happens automatically when certain conditions are met: unauthorized access, visual confirmation of secret data, and acceptance of the keeper's presence." Salara's smile grew slightly wider. "You sat down when I asked you to. That counts as acceptance under the rules." "I haven't sat down yet." "No, but you're going to, because you're an engineer and engineers can't resist looking at systems that work beyond their understanding." She pointed to the floating screens. "And what you're seeing here works very far beyond anyone's understanding. We report it to station security and let the proper authorities handle the investigation. Station security includes at least 3 individuals whose financial records show direct payments from the smuggling group. The proper authorities have been compromised from the beginning." Salera stood and began pacing, her movements fluid despite the obvious weight of the situation. "The hidden witness right exists precisely because normal channels of justice can be corrupted, bought, or eliminated." David looked around the room, noting details that his engineering training flagged as significant. "This room isn't just an archive, is it? It's a backup system. A way to preserve critical information even if the official records are destroyed." "Very good." "The hidden archives maintain independent copies of all treaty negotiations, financial transactions, and technical specifications related to interspecies relations. Information that can't be altered, deleted, or suppressed by corporate interests. And the hidden witness right ensures that there's always someone with legal standing to present that information in court, even if the original keepers are eliminated." Salara's voice grew quiet. 3 previous archive keepers have died under suspicious circumstances in the past year. Car accidents, atmospheric system failures, sudden illnesses that couldn't be treated. David felt the weight of responsibility settling around him like a particularly expensive and dangerous coat. "So by stumbling into this room, I've become your backup plan. You've become my partner if you choose to make the bond formal." Salera activated another display showing legal documents that hurt David's head to read. "The temporary bond grants temporary access and basic protection. The formal bond makes you a permanent co-keeper of the archives with all the authority and targets that involves." "Targets?" "People who profit from war don't appreciate having their business model exposed by inconvenient witnesses. Solara's smile held no humor. The formal bond would make you essentially immune to legal prosecution, but it wouldn't make you immune to corporate assassination, accidental atmospheric system failures, or sudden health crises that can't be treated by conventional medicine. David studied the legal documents, noting clauses that seemed to have been written by someone with a very thorough understanding of both interspecies law and the creative ways that inconvenient people could be eliminated. What happens if I choose not to make the bond formal? Then in 72 hours, your memory of this conversation and everything you've seen is chemically suppressed. You return to your normal duties and I continue looking for someone else who might stumble into the archives at a convenient moment. And the conspiracy continues until someone with the courage to act stumbles into the right room at the right time. Solara's expression grew serious. Or until the ceasefire collapses entirely and 3 species destroy each other for corporate profit margins. The room's lighting changed again. David realized that the crystal walls were responding to their conversation, recording not just words, but emotional responses and decision-making processes. Whatever choice he made would become part of the permanent record. How many people know about the hidden archives? Currently, you, me, and whoever's been monitoring unauthorized access to this section of the station. Solara activated a security display that made David's blood chill. 3 separate individuals have attempted to access this room since you arrived. None of them are authorized to be in this section. The conspirators? Most likely, which means our timeline just became much shorter. Solara began activating what appeared to be defensive protocols, and the room's walls began displaying warning indicators in languages David didn't recognize. The temporary bond gives you basic protection. But if those individuals gain access to this room, they'll try to eliminate both of us before the formal bond can be completed. David looked at the security displays showing the approaching unauthorized personnel. Then at the archives containing evidence that could expose a galactic conspiracy. Then at the alien woman whose calm competence in the face of immediate danger was either very reassuring or deeply terrifying. So my choices are, make the bond formal and become a permanent target for corporate assassination, or have my memory wiped and let 3 species destroy each other while war profiteers get rich. Those are the practical options, yes. Well, David said, standing and moving toward the legal documentation interface, when you put it like that, it's really not much of a choice at all. As he prepared to activate the formal bonding protocols that would permanently link his fate to the preservation of interspecies peace, David reflected that his career guidance counselors had never mentioned that atmospheric processing expertise might lead to accidentally becoming a keeper of galactic secrets. Though given his luck with navigation, he probably should have seen something like this coming. The formal bonding interface looked like it had been designed by someone who understood that legal documents should be both beautiful and capable of withstanding cosmic radiation, corporate lawyers, and the kind of bureaucratic challenges that span star systems. David placed his hand on the crystal scanner, feeling quantum resonance patterns encoding his genetic signature into systems that had been waiting centuries for activation. Before you complete the process, Solara said, her voice carrying new harmonics that David's enhanced hearing could suddenly parse as emotional undertones, there's something else you should know about the conspiracy. More good news about corporate assassination attempts? The atmospheric changes aren't limited to this station. The smuggling group has been installing similar systems in diplomatic facilities across 12 sectors. Solara activated a galactic map that showed the scope of the manipulation in terrifying detail. Every major peace negotiation in the past 2 years has been compromised by artificial aggression enhancement. David studied the map. His engineering mind automatically calculated the technical requirements for such a widespread operation. This would require hundreds of modified processors, coordinated installation across multiple jurisdictions, and access to atmospheric systems during construction phases. We're not talking about a simple smuggling operation. This is systematic manipulation of interspecies relations on a galactic scale. Which is why the hidden witness right exists. Normal investigative channels can't address conspiracy that spans multiple governments and involves corruption at the highest levels. Solara's expression grew grim. The formal bond doesn't just make you a keeper of these archives. It makes you a roving inspector with authority to investigate atmospheric tampering anywhere in charted space. A roving inspector with diplomatic immunity, access to classified technical specifications, and the legal standing to override local authorities when corporate interests have compromised normal oversight. She gestured to documents that were materializing around the bonding interface. Also, hazard pay equivalent to a small planetary budget and life insurance policies that cover death by exotic poisoning, atmospheric sabotage, and accidentally discovering inconvenient truths. David looked at the contract terms scrolling past in multiple languages, noting clauses that suggested previous hidden witnesses had faced challenges considerably more complex than routine atmospheric maintenance. How many roving inspectors are currently active? After the recent accidents and mysterious illnesses? Just me. And soon, if you complete the bonding, you. Solara's smile returned, though it held edges that suggested the job came with unusual hazards. 2 people to investigate galactic-scale atmospheric sabotage. 2 people with unlimited access to classified archives, diplomatic immunity, and the authority to conscript local engineering support anywhere our investigation leads. Also, quantum encrypted communication systems that can't be intercepted by corporate intelligence and emergency evacuation protocols that can extract us from hostile situations faster than most beings can process betrayal. The bonding interface chimed, indicating that David's genetic signature had been successfully integrated into the archive systems. Around them, the room's displays began showing new data streams as his security clearance updated in real time to include access levels that probably violated several international treaties. The technical evidence you'll need to expose the atmospheric sabotage is now available, Solara said, gesturing to engineering specifications that made David's previous work look like basic maintenance. But there's one more thing the formal bond grants that you should understand before you make the final commitment. More roving inspector responsibilities? Shared memory access to all previous hidden witnesses. Every investigation, every discovery, every technique for identifying atmospheric tampering that's been developed over the past 3 centuries. She touched the interface beside his hand. You'll have the accumulated expertise of everyone who's held this position, but you'll also have their memories of what happens to people who threaten corporate profit margins. David felt the quantum resonance intensifying. Awareness of additional minds touching his consciousness with information that would take years to process through normal learning. Shared memory access. That's going to take some getting used to. Most new witnesses find the adjustment challenging. Though the previous witnesses report that having centuries of investigative experience becomes quite useful when corporate assassins start getting creative. Corporate assassins, David repeated, feeling the weight of 300 years of dangerous knowledge settling into his mind. Just another occupational hazard? The room's security systems activated with urgent harmonics as unauthorized access attempts reached critical levels. On the displays, David could see 3 figures in corporate security uniforms approaching the room's entrance with equipment that looked considerably more lethal than standard investigation tools. Decision time, Solara said, her hand moving to controls that would either complete the bonding process or initiate emergency memory suppression. Formal hidden witness with authority to expose galactic conspiracy and a life expectancy measured in years rather than hours. Or memory wipe and a return to normal atmospheric maintenance with a life expectancy of approximately 10 minutes once those security personnel realize what you've witnessed. David looked at the approaching corporate security team. Then at the archive systems showing evidence of manipulation that affected billions of lives across dozens of star systems. Then at the alien woman whose calm competence suggested she'd been preparing for this exact situation for quite some time. "You know," he said, activating the final bonding protocols, "for someone who claims I stumbled into this room accidentally, you seem remarkably well prepared for my arrival." The hidden archives have been monitoring atmospheric system anomalies for months. When the same engineer kept logging overtime hours investigating efficiency discrepancies that shouldn't exist, it became clear that someone with the right combination of technical expertise and moral integrity was getting close to discovering the truth. Solara's smile grew wider as the formal bonding completed, and David felt his consciousness expand to include centuries of investigative knowledge. "Your accidental discovery was carefully orchestrated to occur at the exact moment when we needed a witness with legal standing to expose the conspiracy. So you've been manipulating me. I've been hoping you'd prove worthy of the responsibility. There's a difference." The room's defenses activated as the corporate security team reached the entrance. Energy barriers crackling to life while automated systems began documenting their unauthorized access attempt for legal proceedings. David found himself accessing memories that weren't his own, drawing on investigative techniques developed by previous hidden witnesses who'd faced similar challenges. "All right," he said, feeling strange competence settle over him as the shared memories integrated with his engineering expertise. "Let's go catch some atmospheric saboteurs and save a few species from corporate manufactured warfare." "Welcome to the Hidden Witness Corps," Solara replied, activating protocols that would broadcast their evidence across the galaxy while simultaneously documenting the corporate security team's assassination attempt. "Try not to let the galactic scope of the responsibility overwhelm your sense of humor. Previous witnesses report that laughing at the absurdity of the situation helps with stress management during interstellar conspiracy investigations." As emergency broadcasts began exposing the atmospheric sabotage to diplomatic corps across 3 star systems, David realized that his career change from maintaining life support equipment to maintaining interspecies peace was about to become very interesting. And possibly very short-lived if the corporate security team's equipment was as lethal as his newly acquired memory suggested. The first shot from the corporate security team's plasma rifle struck the room's entrance just as David finished uploading the atmospheric sabotage evidence to every diplomatic facility in known space. The energy barriers held, but the crystal walls began displaying damage assessments that suggested their protection wouldn't last indefinitely. "How long do we have?" David asked, accessing memories from previous hidden witnesses who'd dealt with similar assassination attempts while trying not to think about how many of those memories ended badly. "Long enough to complete the evidence broadcast." "Not long enough for a leisurely evacuation," Solara replied, her fingers dancing across control interfaces with the kind of efficiency that suggested she'd been planning for this contingency. "Though there is one option that might give us the time we need." "I'm listening." "The atmospheric processors you've been maintaining are connected to the station's emergency systems. If we can reverse the chemical modifications and flood the corridors with concentrated empathy enhancers instead of aggression boosters, we might be able to convince our attackers to reconsider their career choices." David accessed his newly acquired knowledge of atmospheric sabotage techniques, cross-referencing them with his practical experience maintaining the station's processors. "It's possible, but I'd need direct access to the primary atmospheric control junction. And that junction is currently between us and 3 armed corporate killers who probably won't appreciate the irony of being defeated by weaponized emotional manipulation." "Actually," Solara said with a smile that suggested she'd been looking forward to this moment, "the hidden archives have been secretly connected to the atmospheric control system since their installation. We can implement the modifications from here." "Connected how?" "Emergency override protocols installed by previous hidden witnesses who believed that sometimes the best defense against corporate aggression is a sudden outbreak of corporate empathy." She activated systems that David's engineering training told him shouldn't exist. Also, the atmospheric processors have been recording baseline emotional profiles for every individual on the station. We can target the empathy enhancement specifically to individuals whose current emotional state includes intent to commit murder for corporate profit. David watched in fascination as his carefully maintained atmospheric systems transformed from life support equipment into precision psychological warfare devices. This is either the most elegant application of atmospheric engineering I've ever seen or the most terrifying abuse of environmental control systems in recorded history. Why not both? The room's defenses began failing as the corporate security team's weapons overwhelmed the energy barriers, but their assault slowed noticeably as the modified atmospheric mix reached the corridor outside. Through the security monitors, David could see the attackers beginning to look confused, their aggressive postures shifting to something approaching contemplative uncertainty. The empathy enhancers are working, Salera observed. They're starting to question whether murdering witnesses to corporate conspiracy is really the best use of their professional skills. How long before the effects wear off? Long enough for station security to arrive and arrest them for attempted assassination, but not long enough for us to complete the full evidence broadcast. Salera activated new protocols that made the room's displays show real-time updates from diplomatic facilities across the galaxy. The good news is that our evidence upload has triggered investigations on 47 worlds. The bad news is that we've also triggered corporate crisis management protocols that will try to eliminate all evidence and witnesses before the investigations can proceed. David watched the incoming reports, noting that his atmospheric expertise was being requested by investigative teams who'd discovered similar sabotage in their own facilities. It looks like we're going to be very busy roving inspectors. If we survive the next few hours, yes. Salera began activating what appeared to be emergency evacuation systems. The immediate priority is getting off this station before corporate crisis management decides that eliminating the entire facility is easier than hunting down specific witnesses. Eliminate the entire station? Atmospheric system malfunctions that result in explosive decompression are surprisingly common when corporate conspiracies are exposed. Very difficult to investigate when all the evidence gets sucked into space along with the witnesses. David accessed memories from previous hidden witnesses, finding detailed records of similar scenarios that ended with entire facilities being destroyed to eliminate inconvenient evidence. Right. Time to go. The evacuation proceeded with the kind of efficiency that suggested it had been planned well in advance. Emergency protocols activated, granting them access to hidden transport systems that connected the hidden archives to private evacuation routes. Within minutes, they were aboard a ship that looked like it had been designed by someone who understood that roving inspectors might need to leave dangerous situations very quickly. Where to first? David asked as they cleared the station's defensive perimeter and watched New Geneva Station's diplomatic facilities beginning emergency lockdown procedures. 12 sectors worth of atmospheric sabotage seems like a lot of territory to cover. We start with the facilities where the modifications are newest, work backward through the installation timeline, and hope we stay ahead of the corporate cleanup teams. Salera activated navigation systems that showed their first destination. Also, we send very polite messages to local authorities warning them that anyone who tries to eliminate evidence of atmospheric tampering will be charged with conspiracy to commit genocide. Genocide? Systematic manipulation of atmospheric systems designed to prevent interspecies peace negotiations qualifies under galactic law. Very serious charges, very unpleasant penalties, very effective deterrent against corporate interference with our investigation. David studied the navigation display, noting that their itinerary would take them to some of the most politically sensitive locations in charted space. This is going to be interesting. Most previous hidden witnesses report that interesting is an inadequate description for the experience of investigating galactic-scale corporate conspiracy while trying to avoid assassination by the people you're investigating. What do they report instead? Terrifying, impossible, and surprisingly educational, Salera said with a grin. Also romantically complicated when working closely with another hidden witness whose species has very different ideas about personal space and appropriate expressions of professional partnership. David looked at her, noting details that his enhanced awareness was suddenly flagging as significant. Are you saying that the hidden witness right includes relationship complications? I'm saying that spending months investigating atmospheric sabotage while trying to avoid corporate assassination tends to create emotional bonds that transcend species barriers and professional protocols. Her violet eyes held depths that suggested those complications might not be entirely unwelcome. Previous witnesses report that shared memories and mutual responsibility for preserving galactic peace can lead to unexpected emotional developments. Unexpected emotional developments, David repeated, feeling warmth that had nothing to do with atmospheric processing and everything to do with the possibility that his accidental stumble into the hidden archives might have led him to something considerably more valuable than just a career change. 6 months later, as David reviewed atmospheric integrity reports from their latest investigation while Salera cross-referenced financial records in their shared workspace aboard the hidden witness ship Veritas, he reflected on the strange turns his life had taken. He'd started as someone who fixed air recycling systems and ended up as someone who fixed interspecies relations by exposing the corporate manipulation that had been preventing galactic peace. The work was more complex now, involving diplomatic protocols that spanned star systems and technical specifications that included emotional resonance requirements. But at its core, it was still the same job he'd always done, identifying what was broken, figuring out how to fix it, and making sure it worked better than it had before. The only difference was that now broken meant systematic corporate sabotage of atmospheric systems designed to prevent peace, and fixing it involved collaborating with someone whose ideas about proper investigative technique included shared memory access and whose species' approach to partnership made human relationship conventions seem remarkably straightforward. And sometimes, when they weren't too busy exposing galactic conspiracies or avoiding corporate assassination attempts, it involved quiet conversations about the technical poetry of properly balanced atmospheric systems and the unexpected emotional developments that could arise when two people from different species shared the responsibility for protecting something larger than themselves. David Chen had always been good at maintaining life support systems. He just never imagined that the most important life support work of his career would involve maintaining the conditions necessary for entire civilizations to trust each other enough to choose peace over profit.